Imagine if you had already stashed Isaiah Likely or J.K. Dobbins so that you didn't have to rush and beat the breakout to the waiver wire and fight against your league mates to get that overall waiver wire ad. Well, today we're talking about 10 plus stash options that you need to be adding before week 2 fantasy football so you're not having to fight people on the waiver wires on Tuesday and Wednesday. Starting off with these guys, they should already be stashed, already be on a roster. Demarcus Robinson is sliding into that wide receiver 2 role for the Los Angeles Rams. We're excited to see what he can do in the absence of Puka Nacua. Bucky Irving had an absolutely incredible week 1 performance. A lot of people are excited for Bucky Irving. A lot of people are scared for Rachaad White. So you got to have Bucky Irving stashed. You look at a guy like Cody Parkinson, who is the number 1 tight end for the Rams, is going to have to step up even more. Like we said, these pass catchers besides Cooper Kupp, we are excited for in the Rams overall offense. And then Tyler Johnson, who, if you don't remember, Tyler Johnson was a really great prospect out of the University of Minnesota. A lot of people liked Rashad Bateman a little bit more, but there was those that like Tyler Johnson, but then of course came in very slow 40-yard dash time, was a backup for the Tampa Bay Bucks over the last 2 years, and Tyler Johnson showed some flash on Sunday. So we definitely have to be considering Tyler Johnson as a stash. But when we're moving on to our actual players that you need to be stashing in fantasy football, number 1 is going to be AD Mitchell. When we look at AD Mitchell in week 1, wasn't great with only 1.2 fantasy points in full PPR. The thing that we do like with AD Mitchell is the fact that he did have 5 total targets. And if we are excited to see what he can do in the coming weeks, because he was the second in the team in target share, even though it wasn't productive. So there might be someone that they look at the overall box score and they see the 1.2 fantasy points and they're like, hey, I'm out on AD Mitchell and he's out there on the waiver wire. 100% be going and trying to add AD Mitchell, because on ESPN, he is only rostered in 35% of leagues. Yahoo, he is rostered on 32% of leagues. So right there in the 30% mark. Sleeper feels like it's a little bit higher, somewhere around 58 to 60%. So AD Mitchell is the first must-stash player of today's video. My second player that we must be stashing is Xavier Legette for the Carolina Panthers. And when we're looking at Xavier Legette, was drafted in the first round to the Carolina Panthers. A lot of people were laughing not only about that accent, also because he wasn't highly rated, like not as highly rated. Like he went ahead of a guy like a Keon Coleman that we had higher, and a lot of people were a little bit worried about his overall profile. Now, the Carolina Panthers offense looked absolutely terrible in week 1. But Xavier Legette was one of the most promising parts of this overall offense, where he put up 7.5 fantasy points in full PPR, had 7 targets, 4 receptions, 35 yards, and did have a kick return for 28 yards. So especially with these new kickoff rules, if he is going to be being the kick returner, can provide some fantasy football points that way. And Coach David Canales on Wednesday said that Legette played really fast and was fantastic in his regular season debut, but still has a long way to go. So like we said, he played over 58% of the snaps in week 1 for a rookie level wide receiver. That's great. We're excited to see that continue to go up over the next few weeks. Xavier Legette is my second guy that you must be stashing. My third guy that you must be stashing is Devaughn Vele for the Denver Broncos. And Devaughn Vele, he is going to be out in week 2, so we're going to have to wait until week 3 to see another little bit of grasp on him. He is a rookie level wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, who put up 11 fantasy points with 8 targets, 8 receptions for 39 yards. Seeing a guy, especially an undrafted guy, get 8 total targets makes him a guy that I want to be stashing at the end of my bench that has a little bit of upside. Like we said, this Broncos team, as much as we talked about Xavier Legette for the Carolina Panthers and this Broncos offense not being great, I am excited to see what he's going to be able to do, because as much as there's Cortland Sutton at the top of the depth chart, looking at Josh Reynolds, Troy Franklin, Devaughn Vele, and Marvin Mims on the wide receiver, and I think Devaughn Vele has the potential to potentially overtake that. So like we said, this might even be someone that you could wait on next week, because he isn't going to be playing in week 2, so you don't got to be worried about it. But I do want to bring this to your attention. Devaughn Vele is a guy that I'm starting to take a little bit of look at. The next guy we're going to be talking about on this list is going to be Keaton Mitchell for the Baltimore Ravens. And the Baltimore Ravens, we saw last year, Keaton Mitchell was a waiver wire gem darling coming in week 9, 23 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points in week 10, 10 fantasy points in week 12. Week 15 had 10 fantasy points before he ended up getting injured with that season-ending injury. And like we said, he's probably going to be out for the first 4 games. But what we've seen from this Baltimore Ravens rushing attack, Derrick Henry, we'll have to see how he does in week 2, but there seemed to be a little bit less spark from Derrick Henry. Not to say that overall touchdown upside isn't still going to be there. I think that is going to be there for Derrick Henry. I just think we need to consider the fact that Keaton Mitchell was an explosive level running back last year. I'm excited to see what he can do this year. A lot of people are all in on Justice Hill. I think Keaton Mitchell is a little bit better than Justice Hill, even coming off of a torn ACL. So give me some Keaton Mitchell as my next mustache. We're going to bring, like I said, we're bringing all these guys, and this isn't in any huge order. Like this isn't on my priorities. Like AD Mitchell, Xavier Legette would probably be my top 2, but kind of going through these next guys, Jordan Whittington had an absolutely explosive preseason season, and in week 1 only played in 3% of the snaps. And so we're thinking that Jordan Whittington may benefit from this Puka Nacua injury. Like I said, you got to make sure that Tyler Johnson and DeMarcus Robinson are already rostered because we did see some fantasy football production with them out. But Jordan Whittington, 23 years old, 6'1", 202, in his rookie level season out of the University of Texas, he looked absolutely electric in their preseason games, but we haven't seen anything the regular season. So like I said, this is more of maybe a deeper level shot, a dark shot, if you may, because Jordan Whittington technically plays in the same spot as Cooper Kupp. So I am going to be curious to see if Jordan Whittington will actually kind of emerge as like the wide receiver 3 over potentially Tyler Johnson or DeMarcus Robinson, but still to be determined. I just wanted to bring his name up because he was super electric in preseason. Next guy is going to be Theo Johnson, bringing you a tight end target for the Giants. And I hear you, the Daniel Jones potentially being already benched rumors, the talk of all of that, it doesn't feel great. Only put up 2.8 fantasy points in week 1, but he dominated the tight end reps for the Giants, where he was played in 86% of the snaps. He only had 4 targets, 1 reception, 18 yards, but he did have 86% of the targets. And this is a team in the Giants that they are going to be down a lot, and they're going to have to throw the ball. And we talked about how it's really Malik Neighbors or bust on the outside for this New York Football Giants. And so I'm banking on, if I need a tight end, if I need to stash at tight end, like we said, we don't like to hold 2 tight ends typically, but if we're playing in a little bit deeper format, if we are super desperate at the tight end spot, I definitely think you need to be considering some Theo Johnson heading into week 2. The next guy we're going to be talking about is going to be Jalen Polk for the New England Patriots. And Jalen Polk is one of those guys where he had the 3rd round pedigree out of the University of Washington, but he's in the same situation. All these stashes, the reason they're stashes is because they haven't performed yet, and Jalen Polk did not perform for the New England Patriots. Now, Jacoby Brissett in this win over the Patriots, they really relied heavily on this run game, but Jalen Polk did play in 54% of the snaps as a rookie, only got 1 target, caught that 1 target for 6 yards, but he was on the field for 35 of 65 snaps. So really, like we said, Demario Douglas had 39 snaps, KJ Osborne had 40 snaps, and Tyquan Thornton had 38 snaps as the starting wideouts. But like we said, Jalen Polk also saw his time shared there. So I think they gave the nod to the veterans early on in the season, but I think as Jalen Polk continues to show more, Jalen Polk is going to step up because there has to be someone that's ready to catch passes. Like, I love me some Pop Douglas, but I do think Jalen Polk he's a purely potential play here for Jalen Polk, but I definitely think there is the upside, and that's why I'm bringing him up in the stash video, because we like the guys that can potentially bring us a little bit of the juice. And the next guy we're going to be talking about is Jaleel McLaughlin for the Denver Broncos, and there's a good opportunity that Jaleel McLaughlin is not out there on waivers for you, because he is taken in he's around 41% available in ESPN leagues, 45% of sleeper leagues, and 37% of Yahoo leagues. But Jaleel McLaughlin only had 5 fantasy points in week 1, did have 35% snap share, but had 10 rushing attempts. Even though he played 35% of snaps, he was involved when he was in there. Saw overall 15 touches. And that's the part for me. 10 carries for 27 yards, and then he caught 5 of 5 targets for 1 receiving yard. So there wasn't a lot of yards downfield. There wasn't a lot of volume. But the one thing that I do want to hit on with Jaleel McLaughlin is he was seeing the volume. So if he's potentially out there on waiver wires, you need a guy that's going to get you 10 to 15 touches a week. I think Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be your guy. Definitely want to target him as a stash candidate. He out of all these guys, he's probably someone that is potentially not actually a stash because a lot of people have him on their radar, but I did want to bring him his attention to you. The next guy we're talking about is Jalen McMillan for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We talked about his teammate from Washington earlier with Jalen Polk. He is owned in less than 15% of sleeper leagues, 3% of ESPN leagues, and 5% of Yahoo leagues. And Jalen McMillan, for all rights and purposes, pretty electric. He saw an 83% snap share in week 1. And that to me slides that he's going to be the wide receiver 3 in this overall offense. 3 targets, 1 reception, 32 yards, and 1 total touchdown. He saw 10.2 fantasy points in week 1. And now I'm not saying that he's going to be able to be a flex option for you because Baker Mayfield looked great. But if this team's going to be passing the ball at that level of volume and he's going to be getting that level of snap share, Jalen McMillan is going to have flex, especially for a 2-flex format potential on a week in and week out basis. So definitely want to make sure that he is being stashed. Rookies paying off dividends in week 1. We love to see it out of the University of Washington. We talked all offseason. Polk versus McMillan. I didn't know which one to go with, but McMillan definitely showing out, balling out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And my final player that you need to be stashing is not going to be CMC. It's going to be his brother, Luke McCaffrey. Played in 61% of the snaps for the Washington Commanders, was drafted in the 3rd round out of Rice, and he was getting a lot of hype in camp, and he got even more hype in camp once Jahan Dotson ended up getting traded from the Commanders to the Eagles. Daniels, because that pretty much opened the floor for Luke McCaffrey to be the clear wide receiver 2. Because really, besides Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder, De'Ami Brown, Zacchaeus, like not a lot of great options. And Luke McCaffrey did have that draft pedigree that we wanted. 3 targets, 3 receptions, 18 yards. Now, 4.8 fantasy points in full PPR. That ain't going to win you a week. We just talked about how Drake London and Marvin Harrison Jr. essentially did that, and that was not ideal for either of them. But for a guy like Luke McCaffrey, who we're going to have at the end of the bench, definitely a great stash opportunity for you, because he does have a high athletic profile. He's 23 years old, 6'2", 198, especially a slot guy. Luke McCaffrey, as Jaden Daniels becomes a better NFL passer, I think this is going to benefit a guy like Luke McCaffrey, especially with the fact that Luke McCaffrey is going to be operating close to the line of scrimmage and not super deep. Even though Jaden Daniels' deep ball is amazing, I just think the opportunity for a guy like Luke McCaffrey as a stash is 100% there. If you like fantasy football, if you like your stashes, hit that like and subscribe button, answering every start sit question down below, answering every trade question down below. We're helping you win your week 2 and helping you win a fantasy football championship. Check out these 2 videos if you haven't, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.